Alright, welcome to my third video on factoring. In this video I want to talk about factoring the difference of two squares, which is this one, and factoring perfect square trinomials, which is this. Okay, so let's go ahead and get started. Now, here we have the difference of two squares. A squared minus b squared equals a minus b times a plus b. Now let's look at this first problem. X squared minus 9. When I look at this, I notice this is the difference of two squares, because I can write this as x squared minus 3 squared. I can rewrite the 9 as 3 squared. So now I just have to identify my a and my b. And if I notice, a is x and b is 3. So all I have to do now is plug them into this formula. I have a is equal to x, b is equal to 3. So plugging these values into a minus b times a plus b, that will give me x minus 3 times x plus 3. And there's my answer. Let's look at this second problem. I have 9x squared minus 16, and I want to factor it. So 9x squared can be written as 3x, all of that squared, because 3x times 3x is 9x squared, minus, and then I'm going to rewrite the 16 as 4x squared. So you can see I have my a and I have my b. A is equal to 3x, b is equal to 4. So plugging these values into the formula, I get 3x minus 4 times 3x plus 4. And there's my answer. Okay, let's take a look at this third one. Okay, I have 4x squared minus 9y squared. I noticed the 4x squared and the 9y squared, those are both perfect squares. Well, the 4x squared can be written as 2x squared minus, and then the 9y squared can be written as 3y squared. So once again, I can get my a and my b. A is equal to 2x, b is equal to 3y. So plugging these values into my formula, I get 2x minus 3y times 2x plus 3y. And here's my final answer. Now let me talk about this x minus 3 times x plus 3. You could have also written this as x plus 3 times x minus 3. Okay, it doesn't matter which one you write first. In other words, the a minus b times a plus b, that could also be written as a plus b times a minus b. Alright, now let's take a look at factoring factoring perfect square trinomials. So I have a squared plus 2ab plus b squared equals a plus b, all of that squared. Now, how do I determine if something's a perfect square trinomial? Well, if you look at this a squared, okay, what's the square root of a squared? Well, that's a. What's the square root of b squared? That's b. If I multiply them together, I get ab, and then if I double it, notice I get this middle term here, 2ab. So the way we determine if it's a perfect square trinomial is we take the square root of the first term, take the square root of the last term, multiply them together, and then double it, or multiply it times 2. Okay, so let's look at this first problem. I want to take the square root of x squared is x. The square root of 64 is 8. Okay, so if I multiply those together, x times 8, that gives me 8x. Then if I double it, I get 16x, which that is my middle term. So this tells me I have a perfect square trinomial. Now, I need to figure out what a and b is. Well, a is the square root of the first term, b is the square root of the last term. So you can see here I have a, here I have b. So I just plug them into my formula. So I get x plus 8, all of that squared. And there's my answer. Now this plus sign here, the x plus 8, the plus sign, well, this sign here, we get that from the sign in front of the middle term. Let's look at this second problem. Okay, I want to take the square root of the first term, which is 2x. The square root of the last term is 3. So I have 2x times 3 is 6x. And then if I double that, I get 12x. And you can see that is my middle term. So this is a perfect square trinomial. Now I have my a is 2x and my b is 3. So I plug them into my formula. That gives me 2x minus 3, all of that squared. And once again, the minus sign, this minus sign here, let me change colors. The minus sign here, that comes from the sign in front of the middle term. Alright, let's take a look at 2 more problems. These will be the last 2. Now, I want to factor these. I want to factor 2x cubed minus 50x. Now, remember, from our factoring strategy, we always want to see if we can factor out the greatest common factor first. Okay, so I look and I notice 2x cubed and 50x has a greatest common factor of 2x. So if I factor out the 2x, I'm left with x squared minus 25. Okay, but I'm not done factoring. because the x squared minus 25 will factor. X squared minus 25 is a difference of two squares. So I can rewrite x squared minus 25 is x squared minus 5 squared. And see, I have the difference of two squares. And using that formula, see, there's my A and 5 is my B. So to factor it completely, I get 2x times, and then remember it's A minus B times A plus B. So that would be x minus 5 times x plus 5. And there's my answer. Okay. Let's take a look at this last problem here. I have 8x squared y minus 32xy plus 32. Well, first thing I want to do, as we notice in the factoring strategy, is factor out the greatest common factor. So the greatest common factor of 8, 32, and 32 is 8. And then I have a common factor of y. Okay. I don't have a common factor for x squared and x because this last term doesn't, the 32y, it doesn't contain an x. So I factor out an 8y. So that's going to leave me with x squared minus 4x plus 4. Okay. Now, I wonder if I can factor this x squared minus 4x plus 4. Well, let's check it like we did in these two problems and see if it's a perfect square trinomial. Well, the square root of x squared is x. The square root of 4 is 2. And so that gives me 2x. When I do x times 2, that gives me 2x. And then if I double it, I get 4x, which is the middle term. So that tells me the x squared minus 4x plus 4 is a perfect square trinomial. So I have my A and I have my B. So I plug it into that formula and I get, well, let me write down my 8y. And so the x squared minus 4x plus 2 is A, which is x, and then minus, because this is a minus sign here, minus b, which is 2, and all of that squared. I hope this video helped. I hope you'll watch the rest of them.